Jake Morrison looked out the main window of his ship and smiled. The stars looked different this far from Earth. He had dreamed of this moment since he was a boy reading space adventure books. Now he was the captain of humanity's first real deep space mission. His ship, the New Horizon, carried 50 brave souls into the unknown parts of the galaxy. Amy Carter sat at her station checking the navigation systems. She was the best pilot Earth had ever trained. Her steady hands had guided them safely through 3 asteroid fields already. Next to her, Ben Rodriguez worked on the engine readings. The man could fix anything that broke and make it work better than before. Lisa Thompson watched the communication arrays, listening for any signs of life in the vast emptiness of space. They had been traveling for 6 months now. Earth was just a tiny blue dot behind them, so far away that radio signals took hours to reach home. Jake felt proud of his crew. They had handled every challenge with skill and courage. The mission was simple: explore, learn, and return home with knowledge that would help humanity reach for the stars. The ship's alarm suddenly screamed through the corridors. Lisa's face went white as she stared at her screens. "Captain, I'm picking up massive energy signatures. Multiple contacts approaching fast from the port side." Jake rushed to her station and saw the readings himself. Whatever was coming toward them was huge, much larger than anything humans had ever built. "All hands to battle stations," Jake called over the ship's communication system. "This is not a drill." The crew moved quickly to their positions. They had trained for this possibility, though no one really believed they would meet alien life on their first journey. Ben powered up their defensive systems while Amy began evasive maneuvers. The first alien ship appeared on their main screen like a dark mountain floating in space. It was 10 times larger than the New Horizon and covered in strange symbols that glowed with purple light. More ships appeared around them, forming a perfect circle that trapped the human vessel. Jake counted 12 of the massive craft, each one bristling with weapons that looked nothing like Earth technology. "Try to communicate with them," Jake ordered Lisa. She sent out friendship messages in every language Earth knew, along with mathematical sequences that should prove human intelligence. The response came quickly, but not in words. A blue beam shot out from the lead alien ship and wrapped around the New Horizon like a giant hand. The human ship stopped moving despite Amy's best efforts to break free. The aliens had them completely trapped. Jake could feel his heart beating fast, but he kept his voice calm. "Prepare for boarding," he told his crew. "Remember your training. We represent all of humanity now." The crew nodded and took their positions near the airlocks, weapons ready, but not pointed aggressively. They would defend themselves if attacked, but they hoped to make peace. The alien boarding craft attached to their hull with a sound like thunder. The airlock opened with a hiss and the first alien stepped through. Jake had imagined many things, but nothing had prepared him for what he saw. The creature stood 8 feet tall with gray skin like stone and 4 arms that ended in clawed hands. Its head was shaped like a triangle with 3 eyes that glowed red in the dim light. It wore armor that seemed to be made from the same material as its ships. Behind the first alien came 20 more, all carrying weapons that hummed with energy. They moved with the confidence of soldiers who had done this many times before. The leader pointed one of its weapons at Jake and spoke in a voice that sounded like grinding metal. The words were impossible to understand, but the meaning was clear enough. More aliens poured through the airlock, spreading throughout the ship with military precision. They seemed to know exactly where to go, as if they had studied human ship designs before. Some headed for the engine room while others went to the bridge. In minutes, they had control of everything important on the New Horizon. One of the aliens raised a strange device and pointed it at Amy. A purple light shot out and hit her in the chest. She collapsed immediately, but her eyes stayed open, staring. In fear and anger, she could not move but was still awake. Ben tried to help her and received the same treatment. One by one, the entire crew was paralyzed by the alien weapons. Jake was the last one standing. The alien leader approached him slowly, studying the human captain with its glowing eyes. It seemed almost curious about this new species it had captured. Jake tried to speak, to negotiate, to find some way to save his crew. The alien tilted its head as if listening, then raised its weapon. The purple light hit Jake like a lightning bolt. His body refused to obey his commands, but his mind stayed clear and sharp. He could see and hear everything around him. The aliens began moving through the ship, collecting data and taking samples. They treated the humans like interesting specimens. Rather than people, the alien leader spoke into a communication device, reporting the capture to someone higher in command. Though Jake could not understand the words, he recognized the tone of a successful military operation. The aliens had done this before to other species, other worlds. Humanity was just the latest addition to their collection. As the aliens prepared to transfer the human crew to their own ships, Jake noticed something important. These creatures were confident, maybe too confident. They had captured humans easily. But they had not bothered to learn much about human nature. They saw weak prey where they should have seen potential danger. The paralysis device kept Jake's body still, but his mind was working furiously. He studied the aliens, their weapons, their behavior patterns. He memorized everything he could about their technology and tactics. If he and his crew were going to survive whatever came next, they would need every advantage they could get. The aliens carried the paralyzed humans to their boarding craft like pieces of cargo. Jake felt anger burning in his chest as he was loaded onto the alien ship. These creatures had made a mistake. They thought humans would be easy to break, simple to control. They had captured fighters without knowing what they had really caught. As the alien ships moved away from the disabled new horizon, Jake promised himself that this was not the end. It was just the beginning of something the aliens would regret forever. The journey to the alien homeworld took 3 days. Jake and his crew remained paralyzed during the entire trip, able to see and hear but unable to move or speak. The aliens fed them through tubes and kept them alive, but treated them no better than livestock being transported to market. Jake used the time to study his captors and learn their routines. When the paralysis finally wore off, Jake found himself in a metal cage beneath the largest building he had ever seen. The structure rose into the sky like a mountain, its walls covered in lights that pulsed with different colors. The sound of millions of voices echoed down from somewhere high above. Amy, Ben, Lisa, and the rest of his crew were in similar cages nearby, all looking confused and angry. A tall alien with golden armor approached their holding area. This one looked different from the soldiers who had captured them. Its skin was darker and its eyes glowed brighter. It spoke in broken English, apparently having learned some human language during their journey. "I am Commander Vexcaller. You are now property of Zephyrian Empire. You will fight for entertainment of citizens?" Jake stood up and faced the alien. "Commander, we're explorers, not fighters. We came in peace." The commander made a sound that might have been laughter. "All species say this. All species learn to fight or die quickly. You will learn too." It gestured toward the massive structure above them. "This is greatest arena in galaxy. Millions come to watch lesser species die for sport." The commander explained the rules with obvious enjoyment. Humans would be sent into the arena to face various creatures and challenges. If they won, they would receive better food and medical care. If they lost, they would die in front of billions of viewers across the empire. The battles were broadcast to every world under Zephyrian control, generating massive profits from betting and advertising. Other alien prisoners were kept in nearby cages. Jake saw creatures he could not even begin to describe, all looking defeated and hopeless. Most had missing limbs or terrible scars from previous battles. A few stared at the humans with what might have been curiosity, but most just lay in their cages waiting to die. The first human to fight was Marine Sergeant Kyle Adams, a tough soldier who had served 3 tours on Earth before joining the space mission. Kyle was chosen to face something called Nexus Wolves, creatures that looked like giant dogs with 6 legs and teeth that dripped acid. The aliens expected him to panic and die within minutes, providing a brief but entertaining show. Jake watched from the holding area as Kyle was dragged up to the arena floor. The crowd noise was deafening, millions of alien voices cheering for blood and death. Kyle stood in the center of a vast circular space filled with rocks, trees, and metal obstacles. 6 Nexus wolves were released from the opposite side immediately. Charging toward the lone human, instead of running or freezing in fear, Kyle did something the aliens had never seen before. He analyzed the terrain quickly and positioned himself behind a large boulder. When the first Volf reached him, he used its own momentum to slam it into the rock. The creature's skull cracked and it fell dead. The crowd grew quieter, confused. By this unexpected development, Kyle continued moving, using the arena obstacles to separate the pack and fight them one at a time. His military training had taught him that superior numbers meant nothing if you could control the battlefield. He grabbed a broken piece of metal and used it as a weapon, striking at the wolves' eyes and joints. Where they were most vulnerable. The battle lasted 20 minutes instead of the expected 2. Kyle killed all 6 wolves through intelligence and tactics rather than brute strength. When the last creature fell, the arena was completely silent. No species had ever performed like this in their first fight. Most died screaming in terror. But this human had turned the hunt into a calculated execution. Commander Vexcaller stared at the monitors in disbelief. The betting systems had crashed because no one had wagered on a human victory. The crowd was stunned into silence, unsure how to react to something they had never witnessed before. Kyle stood among the dead wolves, breathing hard but very much alive, looking up at the alien spectators with defiant eyes. Jake felt a surge of pride watching his crew members' victory, but also deep concern. The aliens would not underestimate humans again. The next fights would be much harder, designed to test the limits of human capability. But Kyle's performance had also shown something important to every human watching from the holding cells below. They could win. Humans were not helpless victims waiting to die for alien entertainment. They had advantages these creatures did not. Understand? Human intelligence, adaptability, and refusal to surrender made them dangerous opponents even in impossible situations. The aliens had wanted gladiators, and now they had them. Over the following days, more humans were sent to fight. Amy faced flying creatures with razor wings and defeated them by predicting their flight patterns. Ben battled mechanical opponents and dismantled them by identifying their weak points. Lisa fought in a maze filled with traps and solved her way to victory through pure logic and observation. Each human victory made the crowd more excited and the aliens more nervous. The arena had been designed as an execution ground where inferior species died quickly for entertainment. Instead, it was becoming a showcase for human superiority in combat intelligence. The betting pools grew larger as spectators tried to predict how long these strange new gladiators could survive. The aliens installed neural collars on each human fighter, devices meant to prevent suicide and ensure obedience. But the collars had an unexpected effect on human physiology. Instead of breaking their will to fight, the devices seemed to enhance human reflexes and tactical thinking. The aliens had accidentally created enhanced soldiers instead of broken slaves. Jake realized that the Zephyrians had made a critical error in judgment. They saw humans as just another weak species to exploit, but they had not bothered to study human history. If they had, they would have learned that humans were the apex predators of Earth, the species that had hunted every other creature on their planet into submission or extinction. Now, the hunters had become the hunted. But the game was far from over. Jake began planning ways to communicate with his scattered crew members during their brief time together between fights. They needed to coordinate their efforts and share information about the arena's weaknesses. The aliens thought they had captured entertainers, but they had actually imprisoned an army. The crowd cheered louder with each human victory, not understanding that they were watching the birth of a legend that would eventually destroy their empire. The Zephyrians had forced humans to fight for sport, and that would prove to be the biggest mistake in galactic history. 3 months had passed since the first human victories in the arena. What started as novelty entertainment had become the most popular programming in the entire Zephyrian Empire. Betting pools on human fights generated more revenue than all other arena events combined. The aliens had never seen anything like the tactical brilliance and adaptability these Earth creatures displayed. Amy Carter had become known throughout the galaxy as the strategist after her incredible performance against the Crimson Spiders. These creatures were the size of small vehicles with venom that could melt metal. Most species died within seconds of being bitten. Amy studied their movement patterns and realized they always attacked in the same sequence. She used this knowledge to predict their strikes and avoid them completely, eventually tricking them into killing each other with their own poison. Her partnership with demolitions expert Rick Baker created even more spectacular victories. Rick had joined the space mission as an engineer but had served in Earth's military before becoming an explorer. Together, they faced mechanical gladiators that had destroyed hundreds of previous fighters. While Amy analyzed weaknesses and planned attacks, Rick used his knowledge of explosives to turn arena equipment into improvised weapons. Ben Rodriguez proved that human intelligence could overcome any technological advantage. When faced with energy-based creatures that could not be touched by physical weapons, he studied the arena's power systems and figured out how to reverse the energy flow. The creatures that fed on electricity suddenly found themselves being drained instead of strengthened. Ben's victory showed millions of alien viewers that humans could adapt to any challenge. The arena masters tried to create impossible scenarios to finally defeat the humans. They designed maze-like battlefields filled with deadly traps and released multiple types of creatures simultaneously. Lisa Thompson faced these challenges with calm logic, treating each fight like a complex puzzle to be solved. Her ability to find patterns and solutions under extreme pressure amazed even the Zephyrian scientists. Emperor Draxva himself began attending human fights, something he had never done for any other species. The ruler of the galaxy's largest empire found himself genuinely entertained by these primitive creatures from an unknown world. He ordered that successful human fighters receive better food, medical care, and living conditions. The Emperor wanted his new gladiators healthy and strong for future performances. The improved treatment had an unexpected consequence. Instead of making the humans grateful and compliant, it gave them more energy and time to plan. Jake used their rest periods to establish communication systems with his scattered crew members. They developed a complex code using hand gestures and arranged clothing that allowed them to share information during their brief encounters in the holding areas. The neural collars that were supposed to control the humans continued to have strange effects. Rather than suppressing their fighting spirit, the devices seemed to enhance human adrenaline responses and tactical awareness. Dr. Sarah Kim, the mission's medical officer, theorized that human brain chemistry reacted differently to the alien technology than expected. The Zephyrians had accidentally created enhanced soldiers. Word of human victories spread beyond the arena to every corner of the Empire. Enslaved species on conquered worlds watched the broadcasts with growing amazement. For the first time in centuries, they saw creatures successfully resisting Zephyrian dominance. The humans were not just winning fights. They were showing the entire galaxy that the Empire could be defeated. Captain Pete Williams discovered that their fights were being watched by resistance groups on dozens of worlds. These underground organizations had been planning rebellions for generations but lacked the inspiration and coordination to act. The human gladiators were becoming symbols of hope for billions of oppressed beings across the galaxy. The arena battles grew more elaborate as the Empire tried to maintain viewer interest and betting revenue. Humans faced giant crystalline creatures that could shoot laser beams from their bodies. They battled in environments filled with toxic gas or extreme temperatures. Each new challenge was designed to be more impossible than the last, but the humans continued to find ways to survive and win. Danny Clark, a former Special Forces operative, began teaching other humans advanced combat techniques during their limited time together. He showed them how to use any object as a weapon and how to read enemy movements to predict attacks. Danny's training sessions turned the entire human group into a coordinated fighting force rather than individual gladiators. The Zephyrians noticed that humans performed better when fighting together rather than alone. This contradicted everything they knew about gladiatorial combat, where teamwork usually led to quick defeats as fighters got in each other's way. Human cooperation seemed to multiply their effectiveness rather than create confusion. The aliens began scheduling more team battles to study this phenomenon. Jake realized that the arena's communication systems connected to networks throughout the Empire. If they could access those systems during a fight, they might be able to send messages to resistance groups on other worlds. The idea was dangerous and would require perfect timing, but it offered possibilities beyond simple escape. The arena's maintenance was performed by enslaved workers from conquered species. These aliens had watched human victories with growing excitement and began leaving small gifts in the holding cells. Tools, food, and even crude maps appeared mysteriously, along with messages of support written in broken English. A galaxy-wide network was forming around the human gladiators. Ben discovered that the arena's power grid was connected to the planet's orbital defense systems. The Zephyrians had designed their capital world with interconnected networks to maximize efficiency, but this also created vulnerabilities. If someone with technical knowledge could access the right systems, they could potentially do much more than just escape. The breakthrough came when a maintenance worker named Kektus, a member of the conquered Altarian species, revealed detailed information about the arena's layout and security protocols. The small alien had been inspired by human courage and wanted to help in any way possible. Kektus provided maps showing every corridor, power conduit, and communication relay in the massive structure. Amy and Ben worked together to analyze the information and develop a plan that went far beyond simple escape. They realized that during the right moment, with access to the arena's central systems, they could broadcast a signal that would reach every world in the Empire simultaneously. The same networks that carried their fights to billions of viewers could carry something much more dangerous to Zephyrian control. The humans began preparing for something unprecedented in galactic history. They were no longer thinking like prisoners trying to escape. They were thinking like liberators planning to free an entire galaxy. The Zephyrians had wanted entertainment, but they had created the spark that would ignite the largest rebellion the universe had ever seen. The arena that was designed to show Zephyrian superiority was about to become the launching point for their empire's destruction. The humans were ready to show the galaxy what Earth's apex predators could really accomplish when they set their minds to revolution. The human gladiators had become the most famous beings in the galaxy, but their fame carried consequences the Zephyrians never anticipated. Every broadcast of human victories reached conquered worlds where enslaved populations watched in amazement. For the first time in centuries, these oppressed species saw proof that the Empire could be resisted and defeated. Captain Pete Williams made contact with the underground networks that had formed around the arena. Maintenance workers, food service staff, and cleaning crews from dozens of different species began secretly communicating with the human fighters. These aliens had been enslaved for generations, but watching human defiance rekindled hope they thought was lost forever. The resistance network grew carefully and quietly. Kektus the Altarian brought detailed plans of the arena's security systems. Vel9, a crystalline engineer, provided information about the power grid connections. Zarbek, a tentacled mechanic, revealed the locations of weapon storage areas. Each alien worker contributed whatever knowledge they possessed to help the humans plan something extraordinary. Amy Carter coordinated intelligence, gathering from her position as the group's primary strategist. She memorized every detail the alien workers provided and began building a complete picture of the arena's vulnerabilities. The facility that seemed impregnable from the inside was actually filled with weaknesses, but only if someone knew exactly where to look and how to exploit them. Ben Rodriguez focused on the technical aspects of their growing plan. The arena's power systems were more complex than anything humans had ever built, but the basic principles were similar to Earth technology. Ben studied the alien designs and figured out how to modify them for purposes their creators never intended. He realized that the same systems that powered the gladiatorial games could be turned into weapons of rebellion. Danny Clark expanded his training program to include alien resistance members who could safely participate During maintenance shifts, he taught Altarian workers basic combat techniques. He showed crystalline engineers how to sabotage equipment without being detected. Danny's military experience proved invaluable in turning scared workers into potential fighters. The arena battles continued to grow more spectacular as the Empire tried to satisfy the massive audience demand for human entertainment. Jake faced creatures from the deepest parts of space, things that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Lisa battled in environments that constantly changed their physical laws. Each victory demonstrated human adaptability to millions of viewers and inspired more beings to join the resistance. Dr. Sarah Kim made a crucial discovery about the neural collars during a medical examination. The devices were not just enhancing human performance. They were also recording everything the humans experienced and learned. The Zephyrians were studying human tactical thinking to understand how these primitive creatures achieved such impossible victories. This information could be valuable, but it also meant their plans were being monitored. The solution came from an unexpected source. Rintal, a young Zephyrian technician who maintained the collar systems, had been watching human fights with growing admiration. Unlike most of his species, he saw the humans as worthy opponents rather than inferior entertainment. Rintal secretly modified the collars to create blind spots in their recording functions, giving the humans privacy to plan their rebellion. Rick Baker discovered that the arena's weapon storage contained devices from hundreds of conquered worlds. The Zephyrians collected exotic weapons as trophies and occasionally used them in special battles for variety. Rick studied these alien technologies and figured out how to combine them in ways their original creators never imagined. He began planning weapon systems that could level the playing field against Zephyrian military forces. The network of resistance supporters grew beyond the arena to include beings throughout the capital city. Dock workers reported on ship movements and security patterns. Government building staff provided information about military planning meetings. Even some lower-ranking Zephyrian citizens began secretly supporting the humans. Fascinated by their courage and tactical brilliance, Emperor Draxva Oren remained unaware of the growing conspiracy around his prized gladiators. He saw only the entertainment value and massive profits the humans generated. The Emperor had even begun inviting foreign dignitaries to watch human battles as demonstrations of Zephyrian power and superiority. He did not realize he was actually showcasing the Empire's greatest weakness. The breakthrough moment came when maintenance worker Jex Cole revealed that the arena's communication array was directly connected to the Imperial Broadcast Network. This system carried arena programming to every world in the Empire, but it also handled military communications, government announcements, and emergency alerts. If someone could access the right transmission codes, they could potentially reach every enslaved being in the galaxy simultaneously. Amy and Ben worked frantically to understand the complex communication protocols. They needed to figure out how to override the system's security measures and broadcast their own message without being detected until it was too late to stop. The technical challenges were enormous, but they had advantages the Zephyrians did not know about. Lisa Thompson had been secretly recording Zephyrian language patterns during her fights and interactions with guards. Her linguistic skills allowed her to decode the basic structure of their military command codes. Combined with technical information from alien resistance members, she began developing a way to mask human transmissions as legitimate Imperial communications. The humans realized they had an opportunity to coordinate uprisings across hundreds of worlds simultaneously. If they could broadcast the locations of weapon depots, prison camps, and military bases to resistance groups throughout the Empire, the resulting chaos would make organized response impossible. The same communication network that celebrated Zephyrian dominance could become the tool of their destruction. Jake understood that success would require perfect timing and enormous sacrifice. They would only get one chance to execute their plan before the Zephyrians realized what was happening and shut down all communication systems. The humans would need to fight their way to the arena's central control room during a live broadcast while being watched by billions of beings across the galaxy. The most challenging part was choosing the right moment to act. The arena schedule included a special championship event designed to celebrate the anniversary of the Empire's founding. All 50 surviving human gladiators would fight together against the legendary Void Reaper, a creature so dangerous that no being had ever faced it and lived. The battle would have the largest audience in galactic history. Pete Williams suggested that this championship fight was their perfect opportunity. Every eye in the galaxy would be watching, every communication system would be active, and security would be focused on the arena floor rather than the control systems. If they could defeat the Void Reaper and simultaneously access the broadcast network, they could turn the Empire's greatest celebration into the beginning of its downfall. The alien resistance members agreed to coordinate their efforts with the human plan. When the championship battle began, maintenance workers throughout the city would begin sabotaging critical systems. Dock workers would disable Zephyrian ships to prevent military response. Government building staff would create chaos. In communication centers, the entire capital would erupt in coordinated rebellion. Ben made final preparations to the technical aspects of their plan. He had identified the exact power conduits that needed to be overloaded and the precise sequence of commands required to access the Imperial broadcast system. The explosion that would disable the arena's defenses had to be timed perfectly with the transmission of rebellion coordinates to every world in the Empire. As the championship fight approached, Jake felt the weight of responsibility for billions of enslaved beings throughout the galaxy. The humans had become more than gladiators. They were symbols of hope and resistance for creatures who had forgotten that freedom was possible. The upcoming battle would determine whether that hope became reality or died in the arena alongside Earth's greatest explorers. The day of the Grand Championship arrived with fanfare that echoed across the entire galaxy. Emperor Draxvil declared an empire-wide holiday to celebrate both the anniversary of Zephyrian dominance and the ultimate battle of his prized human gladiators. Every inhabited world received mandatory broadcast orders to watch the spectacular finale where all 50 humans would face the legendary Void Reaper. Jake Morrison stood with his crew in the holding area beneath the arena, listening to the deafening roar of 5 million spectators overhead. The sound was unlike anything they had experienced before, a wall of noise that seemed to shake the very foundations of the massive structure. Billions more viewers across the galaxy waited for the battle to begin, unaware that they were about to witness the birth of a revolution. The Void Reaper had never been defeated in 3 centuries of arena combat. The creature stood 15 feet tall with armor that seemed to absorb light itself. Its 4 arms ended in claws that could slice through any known material, and its mouth contained rows of teeth designed to tear apart the strongest opponents. The beast had killed over 1,000 gladiators from dozens of species, earning its reputation as the ultimate predator. Amy Carter reviewed their battle plan one final time with the group. They had studied every available recording of the Void Reaper's previous fights and identified patterns in its attack sequences. The creature was intelligent and adaptable, but it had never faced coordinated human tactics. Their strategy required precise timing and perfect communication, but it was their only chance of survival. Ben Rodriguez made final checks on the technical equipment they had smuggled into the arena. Hidden beneath Kyle Adams' armor were the tools needed to access the power grid control systems. Rick Baker carried explosive devices disguised as standard gladiator weapons. Lisa Thompson had memorized the exact command sequences required to override the Imperial broadcast network. Everything depended on reaching the arena's central control room. The gates opened and the 50 humans walked onto the arena floor together. For the first time, the crowd's response was overwhelming, a tsunami of sound that seemed to come from every direction at once. Jake looked up at the Emperor's viewing box and saw Draxvil Arn watching with obvious anticipation. The alien ruler expected to witness the final defeat of his troublesome gladiators. The Void Reaper emerged from the opposite side of the arena with movements that seemed to defy physics. It floated rather than walked, its dark form shifting like liquid shadow. The creature's presence created an aura of fear that had broken the will of countless previous opponents. But the humans had faced fear before and learned to use it as fuel for their determination. The battle began with the Void Reaper charging directly toward the clustered humans, expecting them to scatter in panic like every other species had done. Instead, they executed a coordinated withdrawal that Amy had planned down to the second. Half the group moved left while the other half went right, forcing the creature to choose a target while positioning themselves for a flanking maneuver. Danny Clark led the first assault team in a direct frontal attack designed to distract the Void Reaper, while Jake's group moved toward their real objective. The creature's claws slashed through the air where Danny had been standing moments before, but the former Special Forces operative had already rolled away and was striking at the beast's joints with improvised weapons. Pete Williams and his team created a series of explosions using Rick's devices, filling the arena with smoke and confusion. The crowd thought they were watching an especially spectacular battle, unaware that the humans were actually fighting their way toward the arena's control systems. Each explosion was carefully placed to create cover for their advance toward the central power core. The Void Reaper proved to be even more dangerous than expected. Its intelligence allowed it to adapt quickly to human tactics, and its supernatural abilities made conventional attacks nearly useless. Dr. Sarah Kim was caught by one of its claws and thrown across the arena, her sacrifice buying precious seconds. For the others to continue their mission, Ben reached the power grid access point and began the complex process of overriding the safety systems. His hands moved quickly across alien controls while the battle raged around him. The procedure required exact timing with the broadcast system infiltration that Lisa was attempting from the communication center. One mistake would trigger security protocols and doom their entire plan. Amy coordinated the continuing battle against the Void Reaper while monitoring Ben's progress through hand signals. The creature had killed 6 humans already, but the survivors continued fighting with desperate courage. They knew that millions of enslaved beings across the galaxy were watching, and depending on their success, Lisa reached the broadcast control room and began entering the override codes they had developed. The Imperial communication system was more complex than any human technology, but months of study had prepared her for this moment. She needed to upload the rebellion data to every world in the Empire before security forces realized what was happening. The Void Reaper's attacks grew more vicious as it sensed something unusual about this battle. Previous opponents had focused entirely on survival, but these humans seemed to be pursuing some other objective. The creature's supernatural intelligence recognized that it was part of a larger plan rather than simple entertainment. Kyle Adams made the ultimate sacrifice by throwing himself directly at the Void Reaper's main body, wrapping his arms around the creature's torso to hold it in place. The beast's claws tore through his body, but Kyle held on long enough for Rick to detonate the explosive charges they had placed throughout the arena. The blast damaged the creature and created the final distraction Ben needed. The power grid overload began exactly as Ben had calculated. Electrical surges raced through the arena systems, disabling security measures and creating the access window Lisa required. She uploaded the rebellion coordinates to every world in the Empire, while the broadcast system was still carrying the battle to billions of viewers. Emergency alarms began sounding throughout the arena as the Zephyrians realized their communication network was being compromised. But it was already too late to stop the data transmission. The locations of weapon depots, prison camps, and military bases were now in the hands of resistance groups on hundreds of worlds. Simultaneously, Jake led the final assault against the wounded Void Reaper as explosions rocked the arena structure around them. The creature was still incredibly dangerous, but human teamwork and tactical superiority finally overcame its supernatural abilities. Amy delivered the killing blow with a piece of debris that pierced the beast's armor in exactly the weak spot their analysis had identified. The arena began collapsing as Ben's power overload spread to the structural support systems. The surviving humans fought their way toward the emergency exits while debris fell around them. Behind them, the Void Reaper lay dead and the Imperial broadcast system continued, transmitting rebellion coordinates to every corner of the galaxy across the Empire. Enslaved populations received the uploaded information and began coordinated uprisings. Weapon depots were raided, prison camps were liberated, and military bases were overwhelmed by sudden attacks. The same communication network that had celebrated Zephyrian Power was now coordinating its destruction. Amy led the survivors in commandeering Zephyrian ships from the orbital docks while the capital city erupted in chaos below. Alien resistance members throughout the planet had executed their parts of the plan perfectly, creating so much confusion that organized military response was impossible. The empire that had ruled for 3 millennia was crumbling in a matter of hours. Jake stood on the bridge of a captured Zephyrian warship and watched the lights of burning facilities across the planet's surface. The species that had been captured for entertainment had become the catalyst for the largest rebellion in galactic history. The Empire had forced humans to fight for sport, and that decision had cost them everything. 6 months later, the Galactic Liberation Coalition held its founding ceremony with humanity as a charter member. The Zephyrian Empire had been completely dismantled, its territories redistributed among the species it had oppressed. Emperor Draxva Aran himself was serving as a laborer on a reconstruction project, learning what slavery felt like from the other side. The arena where humans had first proven their worth was now a memorial to all the gladiators who had died for alien entertainment. But it was also a symbol of hope for the entire galaxy, proof that no oppression was permanent and no empire was invincible. When faced with the human spirit of resistance and the universal desire for freedom,